Confidence, confidence, confident. I can be confident, confidence, confidence, confident. I can be confident at work.
Hello and welcome to the Confident at Work podcast. I'm your host and your confidence coach, Anna Manning. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is going to resonate with a lot of you. So I had a consult recently with a client who described this kind of mental chatter she was experiencing as background babble. And I thought, what a perfect description. Background babble is that constant low level noise that you might experience in your mind, like the running commentary, could be made up of self criticism, what ifs, doubts, overthinking, and it can take up so much of your mental space. So today we're going to talk about how to banish background babble. We're going to look at what it is, when does it happen, how it impacts your confidence, and what you can do about it. So if you've ever experienced this background babble, stay with me. So, what is background babble? Well, I think of it as that unhelpful internal dialogue that can kind of play in the back of your mind. And it might sound like, why did I say that? And everyone else is so much better at this than me. And what if I mess this up? Right? This kind of background babble chatter will sometimes be really loud. It'll sometimes be really quiet. It's automatic. And for most people who experience it, it is persistent. So it might be like a radio station that you really didn't decide to tune into, but you can't seem to turn it off. And the real trouble is, it isn't just noise in the background. It influences. It influences your thoughts. It influences how you feel. It influences your decisions. And it has a massive influence over your level of confidence. And I thought a little bit about when does this happen that people will notice that background babble or they'll tell me that it's getting in the way for them. And it's basically every potential moment in your working life, potentially in your personal life too, but we're going to focus on work life here. So I've heard while I'm working on something, while I'm thinking about working on something, before I go to do something, during doing something, after I've done something, while I'm speaking to someone, while I'm in a meeting, while I'm presenting, while I'm traveling to work, when I'm traveling from work, when I'm thinking about work, 3 a.m. For some of you, the better question to ask would be, when doesn't it happen? And you might give a thought now to how much of your time do you think that background babble is present in your working day? Is it 100%, 50%, 10%? What is that for you? And it's good to know because if something was impacting me 80% of the time, 100% of the time, even 50% of the time, I would be pretty hell-bent on actually doing something about it. But background babble is one of those issues that people, like a lot of the issues we talk about on the podcast, generally won't talk about. You probably haven't shared that you have this constant internal background babble going on, and it undermines your confidence, your decision making, your ability to focus, your ability to think clearly. You probably don't discuss that with people. It probably isn't on your personal development plan. And we're going to have a chat about that later, because if background babble is affecting you, then I'm going to make the case for why this should be on your personal, your professional performance development plan. So, how does this background babble actually impact your confidence? When it goes unchecked, which it does for most people, it can undermine your confidence in a few ways. So, the first one is because it increases self doubt, because there might be a lot of questioning your actions, your abilities. It creates a lot of fear, trepidation, uncertainty, unsureness. I don't even think that's a word, but when you have a lot of that doubt within your background babble, it puts you within this state of uncertainty. And uncertainty is a difficult place to be. Imagine you're trying to make a decision, you're trying to get something done, you're trying to send an email to a colleague, you're trying to decide how to deal with a particular situation. But that background babble is creating a lot of uncertainty. It clouds your mind, it clouds your judgment, it clouds your ability to just make a decision, to get on with something, to plump for something. And over time, so not just in the moment, that background babble increases self doubt because the uncertainty then acts like a vicious cycle of creating more self doubt, which may go into all areas. So it may go from one thing to be generative and have you questioning, should I even be here? Should I be doing this job? Can I even do this? So that increased self doubt, of course, has a negative impact on your confidence. The second way I think it really impacts people's confidence is the overthinking takes a lot of energy replaying future events, past events, future potential scenarios, and worrying, what if this, what if that? If that background babble for you does a lot of this overthinking, tearing a situation to shreds in your mind, ruminating, it takes up an awful lot of your energy. And of course, if the overthinking is generally in a negative direction, which for most overthinkers it is, so what can go wrong? What did I do wrong? What might go wrong? What's already wrong? How might this be wrong? How might this be perceived? What do they think of me? All of that overthinking, of course, has a negative, eroding impact on your confidence. The third thing is that it impacts your mental space. Your mental clarity is reduced. What you'll find in the very particular moment is that you'll find yourself listening to the babble, getting in conversations with the babble, arguing with the babble, wondering whether the babble is true, thinking about the scenarios that the babble is suggesting, listening to the criticism that it comes up with. And all of that reduces the clarity of your thinking because it reduces the amount of space that you have in your brain. It reduces your ability to focus on whatever it is you're trying to do. The amount of times that I talk to people about wanting to feel more confident when they are with other people, when they are interacting with other people in whatever setting that is. And it's very difficult for them to do that when they can't even use the mental faculties that they have to be present, to focus, to understand what's being said, to add their points. They can't do that when there is so much background babble going on. It is almost impossible to listen to people. It's almost impossible to be spontaneous. It's almost impossible to, connect dots and use your expertise when there is just so much stuff going on inside your head. It can even be difficult to be remotely present in the room. You might think, oh God, what did they just say? Or now I've lost the moment, because it's very hard to do two things at once. And when you're trying to do something like engage with another human and you have all that background babble going on, very difficult. The last way that I see it impacting people's confidence is that it's a real emotional drain. So that background babble, and if you experience it, I know is exhausting. It is exhausting and it can leave you feeling depleted. It tanks your resilience, but generally it just doesn't leave you with as much energy to actually just do the job you're trying to do. And I'm guessing that your work has challenges enough without your energy constantly being drained by this background babble. So what can you do about it? And the good news is that background babble doesn't have to be permanent. With the right kind of help, with the right kind of support, you can turn it down and or remove it. Even if you've had that background babble in your head for 50 years of your career, there is light at the end of this particular tunnel. And I really thought about this when I was making this podcast episode, because in these episodes, I want to give you as much as I can to take away and use on your own. But I really struggled with this one. And my honest opinion is that the very best thing you can do if you've got a lot of background babble is to get some help. If it's prevalent, if it's lasting, if it gets in the way at work, then figure out how you can get some help to deal with it. Because I don't think it's that easy to turn this stuff down on your own. Now, I'm going to give you some tools and some tips for you to do that as far as you're able. But this is one of those things where I think if this is prevalent and a problem for you, and it has been for some time, you may actually need some qualified support from an appropriate change worker who can help you with it. And I'm going to give you a little kind of potted idea of how I would help you with it if you came to me. Because to be quite honest, I am not sure that I've ever worked with a client who told me that they didn't experience this kind of background babble, right? This is the norm. Even though people don't talk about it, even though people don't share it, even though you might never have told anyone, this kind of background babble, when you are not feeling as confident as you want to, or certainly for the people I work with, is the norm. So I just ask people directly, what is it that goes on inside your head in that moment? So let's say they're telling me about a moment where they want to feel more confident and they don't. Maybe it's in a one to one with a particular senior person. I'm like, what goes through your head? And then again, maybe there's another scenario where they want to be more confident, like presenting at a board meeting. Again, I'm interested. What goes through your head? What do you think you're thinking in those moments? What is that mental chatter that happens beforehand? What is the mental chatter that happens during? What's the mental chatter that happens afterwards? And I'm paying really close attention to what my client says at this point, because the content of the background babble, holds gold. It tells us the work that we need to do in order to turn the background babble down or off. And to be honest, the stuff that I hear is fairly standard. I haven't made an exhaustive list, but I mean, it would generally be the babble is telling me something like, I don't know what I'm doing and they're all going to find out, or I'm not good enough, or I'm going to look stupid, or nothing I say is interesting enough. You'd think that it would be really individual to the particular person, but actually, what I've found over the years, and it's been 6 years now I've been doing this work, is that the background babble of our brains it's fairly similar. And I hear the same things over and over again. And you might even recognize some of those examples that I just gave you. So, in order to stop or reduce drastically that background babble, we have to figure out what it is that you're actually believing. So, if you tell me the background babble just generally is saying you don't know what you're doing and they're all going to find out, I want to pick up that thread and say, okay, so you don't know what you're doing and they're all going to find out. And then what? And then what? And then what? And then what? And it usually ends up as some version of, then I'm going to be a failure and then nobody will love me and I'll be alone. Behind this background babble, there are the fears of all human beings. I'm not good enough. I'm not likable. I'm not lovable. I'm going to end up alone. I'm going to end up cast out. I'm going to end up as a bag lady. That's my favorite. And when we can really dig in and see what is your brain actually thinking in that moment when it's producing all of that background babble. And it may be that if I talk in this meeting, I'm actually going to end up as a failure who nobody loves and a bag lady. And at that point, very often a client will start laughing and they'll say, I can't believe I was thinking that. It seems so silly. Like, that is not going to happen. But loads of that background babble will be being generated on the basis that it's very important for them to avoid being a failure and a bag lady. And this background babble telling them they don't know what they're going to do and everybody's going to find out is in some way desperately trying to protect them from being a failure bag lady who's alone. It ain't working. In fact, it tends to be causing more harm than doing good. But such is the logic of our unconscious. So, if I'm working with you on this, we're really looking at those specific scenarios where you can notice that background babble. We're finding out what it is. And then we're going a little bit deeper and finding out what's the fear underneath the babble? What's it doing? What's it trying to prevent you from? And do you need it to be doing that? And through that process, we'll discover all kinds of interesting things. We never really know where this work is going to go. But what we do know is that once we've done it, that background babble is no longer necessary. So when we fix the problem underneath the background babble, it doesn't need to be generated anymore. So in that example, a client started out by saying, I don't know what I'm doing and they're all going to find out. And by the time we finish working together, that client really isn't thinking that anymore. They just don't really believe it anymore. They're trusting themselves and they feel generally kind of okay. And that means that all that noise which was being generated when that client believed, I don't know what I'm doing and they're all going to find out. Like, you need to scan the room, you need to be really aware, you need to see how they're perceiving you. Are you going to sound stupid? Does this look good enough? What are they going to think? They're going to think you can't do your job. All of that is being generated when I really believe I don't know what I'm doing and they're all going to find out. So when we go in and fix that, then that background babble does not need to be generated anymore. Now, I really thought about whether you could do this alone. And I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't never say never. Maybe you can do this alone. And I'm going to give you some ideas and some things that might help you. But again, with the caveat that I think you need somebody who is a skilled change worker to support you with this. And specifically somebody who can help you with background babble and is confident in their ability to do so. Because I've had quite a few clients who've worked with other people, and whilst they might have had good results in some areas, they have not been able to change these seemingly ingrained, seemingly hardwired patterns of thinking, which are generating all this background babble. But I said I would give you some things to try and do it on your own if you want to do it on your own. And hey, write to me and tell me whether it works. So the first thing I want you to do is figure it out. Write down when you experience the background babble, or at least when you notice it. So you'll notice it's the same stuff that comes up again and again. It probably won't be that long before you've got a pretty exhaustive list, but you'll see different things in there. And I want you to really tune in and look at your list and say, okay, what are the sort of themes here? What are the fears? And that may give you some understanding, some insight. So tune in and figure it out and write it out, because your brain's going to be able to double back on you so fast. It's unbelievable. Then once you've identified that chatter, you could just go through methodically and start to challenge it. Ask, is this factual? Do I have evidence which contradicts it? What would I say to a friend who was thinking the same way? Now, my hope in suggesting that you do this bit of work is that I sound really pessimistic here. I'm struggling with this. You may be able to change what's generating the background babble with these exercises, but I doubt it. I think the best that you can hope for is for your awareness to be increased and for you to be able to come in the moment and question that background babble such that you can choose to do something different, to ignore it, to just understand, okay, well, that's just background babble. It's not necessarily true. And I'm just going to do this thing anyway. And that's going to help you. The other thing that I'm going to invite you to do is see this a bit more holistically as part of your high confidence cycle. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we have low confidence cycles and we have high confidence cycles. And that's the basis on which we work here at Confident at Work. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the link in the show notes and click on Take the Confidence Assessment. That is going to take you through and ask you questions designed to figure out if you're in a low confidence cycle and help you to figure out how to get out of it and into a high confidence cycle. Because getting into a high confidence cycle requires that you do some quite specific work. And that work is going to help you with the stuff that's creating that background babble. So, when you're in a high confidence cycle, you're going to be practicing good self management, setting realistic standards, and giving yourself fair feedback and acknowledgement. And all of those things will help to reduce background babble. Once you have a real solid grounding in that high confidence cycle, so in good self management, in setting realistic standards, and giving yourself fair feedback and acknowledgement, I am yet to meet a background babble issue which wasn't rooted in one of those areas. So that is another really good thing for you to look at. And if you're listening to this in real time, come and join us in Confident at Work 2025. It's a free training and it's going to give you a grounding in the high and low confidence cycles and help you figure out what you need in order to grow your confidence. That is a good place to start. I guess my last word on this is that there is no part of your work life which is not going to be improved by figuring out how to banish this background babble. And it might feel like a permanent fixture in your mind, but it does not have to be. It does not have to control you. You can reduce and remove the background babble with appropriate support if necessary. It is possible, even if you've been experiencing it your entire career. I've worked with people who are very close to retirement and they've been experiencing it their entire career. Then they can have a little bit of mental freedom and banish the background babble, and they have done. You can reduce it and remove it. And my friend, imagine what your day would actually be like if you managed to do that. Because you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that you're one of the good ones. I'm going to assume that you're one of the nice people. And I really want for you to feel good while you're doing good work. This background babble, will leave you feeling less than good most of the time. It doesn't have to be like that. Imagine if you could switch that background babble off. Imagine the lightness. Imagine the clarity. Imagine the mental space. Imagine what it would be like to go about your day with that calmer mind. For you to be able to be present in the moment that you were in. To be decisive because of that. To be able to focus on the conversation that was being had. On the person in front of you. On the task in hand. And then to actually be able to switch off at the end of the day. I think you deserve that. And I think that it's possible because I've seen it happen. From the most atrocious background babble to clearer, calmer, more confident. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Confident at Work. And I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.
Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.